So good morning to everyone. So yesterday we started on the different types of yields that were available, right? And we spoke about three different types of yields: nominal yield, current yield, and yield to maturity. And when we talked about nominal yield, we essentially said that nominal yield was your coupon for the year as a percentage of your face value, which in other terms was equals to your coupon rate. Coupon rate. And we said current yield was coupon for the year as a percentage of price. And we said current yield is a little better than nominal yield because current yield takes into account the price that you pay. Nominal yield is only relevant if you buy this bond at face value, right? Debenture or bond at face value. Otherwise, nominal yield doesn't really give us a measure of our actual return. See, a lot of people look at the coupon rate and think that the coupon rate is their return. It's not, right? Understand that when you look at the coupon rate, if you buy it at face value, then it's your return. Otherwise, the coupon rate is not your return. So this is the problem with nominal yield. Nominal yield just gives us an indication of what the return could be, but it is not enough. It is not a complete idea of the return because it only takes into account the return if we buy it at face value. Slightly better is current yield. Current yield takes into account the price that we pay. But what's the problem with current yield? It doesn't take into account our capital gains or losses, right? So it only takes into account the income component of the return. So current yield again is an incomplete depiction of the bond's return. It is the income. It is essentially the income component of the return. So what's a better complete picture of a bond's return? Yield to maturity. Because yield to maturity takes into account the total return. The total return is the capital gain as well as the coupon, taking into account the price that you paid, time value of money, compounding, all of this into consideration. Right? So what is yield to maturity? Yield to maturity is the R, the return, that makes the price of the bond today equal to the present value of your future cash flows. In basic terms, in other words, yield to maturity is the IRR of your bond, right? It's equivalent to the IRR of your bond. In basic terms, yield to maturity is the return that takes into account your capital gains as well as dividends. Not dividends in this case, coupons, as a percentage of the price that you pay. But this is not the yield to maturity. It is only an approximation because the actual yield to maturity takes into account time value of money. It takes into account discounting, right? It takes into account compounding. So when we talk about yield to maturity, we make two assumptions. One is that the bond is held until it matures, right? That's why we call it the return if you hold the bond until it matures. Okay. So that's the first assumption, is that you hold the bond until it matures. And the second assumption is that coupons are reinvested. All cash flows that you receive are reinvested at yield to maturity, right? If you do not reinvest these cash flows at yield to maturity, you will not get the return that is promised from the bond. Okay. So that's yield to maturity. And how did we calculate yield to maturity? Because we are using an approximation to calculate yield to maturity, we went through a few steps. The first step was to guess the yield to maturity. And we said the first guess was essentially to look at the capital gains for the year plus coupon for the year as a percentage of your average price, average capital, right? This is just to make it a little bit more accurate, right? You use the average price and not the opening price. And using this, because bonds have very long periods, very long holding periods, right? You use this R1 to figure out P1 and calculate P1, right? The price, if it is the price if based on R1, and you check whether P1 is equal to the result that you want, the result that you're looking for. Most often it will not be, in which case you have to make a second guess, right? So R2 again should be an intelligent guess based on P1, right? Based on P1 and P0. Meaning if P1 is higher than P0 or lower than P0. P0 is the price that you want to find, the market price. P1 is the guessed price. Price calculated from the guessed yield to maturity. Based on this, you use R2 to find P2. And then, as long as P1 and P2 must be on both sides of P0. It could be higher or lower, but it has to be on the same side as P0. If it is higher, P1 must be higher than P2 and P0 must be in the middle. If it's lower, P1 must be lower than P2 and P0 must be in the middle, right? As long as this condition is met, you can interpolate to find P0. R0. So that's what we did to find the to maturity. So based on this, did you all try? I hope you all tried. I left the screen open. I'll give you 2 more minutes. Please let me know what the answers are for example 2, part 1. Okay. Yeah, Johnny, correct. Put it in percentage terms, right? Not decimals, but it's correct. It's a yield. Miran, yes, correct. When here, yes, correct. So you all are getting the current yield correct. Next set is yield to maturity. Here, coupon rate is not given, but there shouldn't be a problem. Why? Nominal yield is given, right? Nominal yield is given. Coupon rate is not given, but nominal yield is given. And remember, nominal yield is equals to your coupon rate, right? So therefore, you know that the coupon rate is 12%. So if coupon rate is equals to 12%, we are obviously assuming face value is 100. We've said that multiple times. Then what is your current yield? Current yield is the coupon for the year. Although this is a semi-annual coupon, we don't talk about the semi-annual coupon, right? We're talking about the coupon, entire coupon for the year, which is 12% into 100 divided by the price of 103.75. So you all are getting 11.56 current yield. So do you see that although a coupon of 12% is promised, because you're buying this bond not at 100, you're buying it at 103, the actual return to you is 11.56, right? The actual yield to you of your coupon is 11.56 because you're paying higher to buy the bond. 12% is only if you pay 100 rupees. It's per 100 rupees. But if you're paying 103 rupees, the actual return to you is 11.56. And what's the yield to maturity? Any questions? Let me know. Okay. I don't think your guess one is correct, 55. Oh, sorry. Still not. Remember, do your calculations based on annual figures, right? Ravindu also, my guess one is not, it's different. Yeah, also your guess one seems to be a little too high. The number that you're getting seems to be a little on the higher side. So guess one. What are we saying? R1 is your capital gain for the year, annual capital gain, plus your annual coupon as a percentage of your average price. Okay. Sorry, my mistake. I didn't use average price. So capital gain, your annual capital gain is, this is a loss, right? I hope you all understood that this is a loss. You start at 103.75. At the end of the period, you get you get 100. So your capital gain is a loss. 100 minus 103.75. This is over 5 years. So your annual capital loss is 0.75 negative, plus coupon of 12 divided by average price. Average price is 103.75 today, plus 100 at the end of the period divided by 2. How much is this? Is it 11.04? Because I made a mistake actually. 11.04. Okay. Yeah, 0.04. So here now you can use 11.04 as your R. But because it's still an approximation, it's enough. If you want to, you can approximate it to 11 because it's very close to 11, right? You know that your first R is never going to give you your exact P. So you don't have to use 11.04 to guess, to try P. Your first guess is 11.04. You can approximate that to 11. It's close enough, right? Because 11.04 also is never going to give you your exact answer, right? That's never going to happen. So because of this, just making a small approximation is okay. So you make it in a way that your calculations are easier, right? So 11.04 means 11. That's enough. So then what is P1? P1 is C. C is 6. I hope you all understand that, right? Because 12% semi-annual coupons. 12% is for the year, so C is 6 into 1 minus 1 plus R. R is how much? If we use 11, R is how much?
Yeah.
No, right?
0.055.
0.055. Because 11% is for the year. This is semi-annual, right? So to the power minus n is 10.
Yeah.
Divided by R plus face value divided by 1.055 to the power 10. How much is that?
Madam, that 0.055 you got it from by dividing 11.04 by 2?
By dividing 11 by 2. Because I
Yeah.
use 11.
Okay.
Remember I said, you can use 11.04. If you use 11.04, then it will be 0.5502, right? But even if you use 11.04, what I'm saying is you're never going to get 103.75. You will get something close, but not exactly. So 11.04 can easily be approximated to 11 to make your calculations easy. That's all. It's okay for you to take 11.04, not a problem. 103.6146. Can somebody confirm? Okay, I have 103.6.46 and 103.7688. Which one is correct? Okay, 103.7688. Thank you. So that's P1. Close, but not close enough, right? This is 7.5, this is 7.689. So now what do you have to do? I have to guess R2. Should my guess be higher than R1 or lower than R1? It's very close, but not exactly. Okay, 59.
Higher, no?
Higher or lower? I have two different answers. That's why I'm asking, because one person has said lower and you're saying higher. But rationale? Whoever.
When rates,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, when rates go down, the price goes up.
Right. Do you need the price to go up or do you need the price to come down?
Price to come down.
You need the price to come down. So therefore, your guess should be higher, right? Correct. So you say higher, that's correct, right? So you need the price to come down. It's 103.76. We want 103.75. So I need the price to come down. Therefore, the rate must go up. So it should be higher than 11. What do you want to try? Up to you all. It's quite close, but you don't want to be in a situation that you're too close and you still get something higher because you want to interpolate, right? So you have to be a little bit careful. You want something very close. You don't want something very far. Otherwise, your answer is wrong. In the sense, not wrong, but your answer becomes the inaccuracy increases, right? What do you all want to try? Okay. So when you're trying, it's okay to try something that is easy for you to, put your numbers in. But 11.25 is fine. So therefore, what is your semi-annual R? Is 0.0. So see here, it becomes 0.55125. Am I right? Yeah.
56125. Sorry,
Five, yeah,
0.5625.
5625.
5625.
Yeah, 5625. Five, six, two, five. So we use this to guess E2. Okay, I have an answer that says 102.8139. Is that correct? I'm waiting for somebody to confirm. Let me know. Correct? Hundred two point eight zero nine seven. That's another answer that I have. Okay, 102.8097. I have two confirmations. Okay. And I just check in terms of the rounding whether that is the problem. So now we have two, sorry.
Yeah, I'll do.
Thank you. Sampath also, I mean, I have two answers that say 8097. 8106 is not, I assume, correct. 8097 is okay, right? Nobody else has any problems? So Sampath, just check that again. Now we have two answers, right? We have R1, 11% at 103.7689, and R2, 11.25% at 102.8097, and 103.75 in between. So put those together. So we know that please tell me what those numbers were. R1 was 11%. And for that, we got P1 is equals to 103.7689, I assume. If it is incorrect, please let me know. And for R2, it was 11.25%. We got P2 equals 102.8097. So based on this, we are trying to find the R when the price is 103.75. We know that when R is 11, at 11%, price is 103.7689. and at 11.25, price is 102.8097. So we use the fact that we have two triangles. We're trying to interpolate. This is a curve, so there is an error. But we assume that because we are using numbers that are very close to each other, this error is very small, right? So there is a triangle here, and there is a triangle here, right? So we know that the slope of the triangle, delta y divided by delta x, change in y divided by change in x, of the yellow colored triangle is what? The change in y is 103.7689 minus 102.8097 divided by 103 is represented by 11%, 102 is represented by 11.25%, equals 103, this small triangle, 103.75 minus 102.8097. So 103.75 is represented by R, 102 is represented by 11.25. So how much is R? Remember, it should be 11 point something because it is between 11 and 11.25, right? So if you all are getting anything that is not 11 point something, that means your answer is not correct. Okay. I'm getting 11.0049. Is that right? That's the answer somebody is giving me. Let's be fine. Correct or not? Can somebody confirm? Okay. Thank you. 28. So 11.0049. Try the second part. That's not very difficult. That doesn't have this much calculations. Just try it and see. Okay, Mirani, you're on the right track. I want just check it and tell me, and I want nominal yield. So current yield and yield to maturity. Nominal yield is already given to you all. No, incorrect. No, yeah. Correct. Mirani, now yield to maturity. Correct. So do you all start to see here? Now nominal yield was 12, right? We knew that nominal yield was 12, and that gave me an idea of my coupon rate, which is also 12. Current yield is my coupon divided by price, but now the price is 100. So current yield is also 12. Yield to maturity, I can do it in a couple of different ways, right? Let me show you. So yield to maturity, we can do it by the first guess method. So if I do guess 1, R1 is equals to capital gain. Capital gain is 0. Do you see? You start with 100, end with 100, plus coupon of 12, divided by average price. Average price is still 100. So your guess is 12%, right? R1 is 12%. Now, you can put this 12% to calculate T1. But we also know from our previous sums that if your required rate of return or your return is equals to your coupon rate, then always your price is equals to your face value. So without calculations, we can say P1 is 100. So what is the YTM? It is 12%. Okay. Without calculations, you can calculate it, you should get the same answer that it is 100, other than rounding error, right? You should get 100. Without calculations, as soon as you get that your guess 1 is 12%, we know that when your return is, your yield is equals to your coupon rate. Remember, that was the first thing that we did in bond valuations. Your price is equals to face value. So therefore, your price is equals to 100, which is what we want. Okay. So yield is 12%. So, or the same thing, you can think of a different way. Your price, we know, market price is 100. Market price is 100. 100 is equals to face value. So that should imply to you that market price is equal to face value, which implies to you that yield is equals to your coupon rate, right? Is equal to your coupon rate of 12%. You can do it either way. Without calculations, you can come up with the price. Any questions here? Okay. So look at the 3 examples that we did, right? Right, in example 1, so we calculated nominal yield, current yield, and yield to maturity, right? What did you see in example 1? In the very first example we did yesterday, how much was what were the details of example 1? Price was equal to 96. Coupon was 10%, right? Price was equal to 96. Coupon rate was 10%. What did you see? What was the nominal yield? What was the nominal yield? Yesterday's sum. Yeah, guys. How much is it? Nominal yield yesterday we calculated.
10%,
No.
no?
Yeah, 10%. And then current yield
10.42.
10%. 10.42. And yield to maturity was 12.37.
37.
Right, 12.37. And then we did example 2 today. Price was equals to 103.75. Coupon rate equals 12. What did you see? Nominal yield was 12%. Current yield was 11.56%. And yield to maturity was 11.005, right? And then the last example, price was equals to 100, coupon rate 12%. What did you see? Nominal yield was 12, current yield was 12, and yield to maturity was 12, right? Do you see here that this is a discount bond? This is a premium bond, and this is a par bond, right? And always in a par bond, nominal yield will equal current yield will equal yield to maturity. Always. You don't have to do calculations, right? Always in a discount bond, nominal yield will be the lowest. Current yield will be in between. Yield to maturity will be the highest. Why is this? Because nominal yield doesn't take into account the price that you pay, which is lower than 100. Current yield takes that into account. Therefore, current yield is higher than nominal yield. But current yield doesn't take into account the capital gain because you are buying this at 96. So yield to maturity will always be higher. And vice versa for premium bonds, always nominal yield will be the highest versus current yield versus yield to maturity. Why? Because nominal yield is the coupon rate, but doesn't take into consideration that you're buying at a price higher than the coupon. So actually your current yield, your actual yield is lower than what is promised to you, right? And yield to maturity is even lower because your capital gain is not taken into account. Capital loss is not taken into account. You're buying it at 103 and you're only getting back 100 at the end of the period. So yield to maturity takes that into consideration. So your yield to maturity will always be lower than your nominal yield, right? It will be the lowest of the three. Always in a discount bond, premium bond, and par bond, these three patterns will be there. Any questions?
Madam, when we take an investment decision, like in our assignment, what is the parameter we should looking at? NY, CY, or YTEM?
Good question. What do you think, though?
I
Good question. No, what do you think? What is
believe
the best?
YTM is the.
Sorry, you said YTM?
Yeah,
You-
why is it YTM since it represents the profitability or the yield in the lifetime of the investment? Or
Yeah,
it,
I mean, of the three, YTM is the most superior because YTM takes into account the total return. YTM has its problems, but YTM takes into account the total return. Nominal yield doesn't take into account the price. Current yield doesn't take into account the capital gains or losses. YTM takes into account that total return, right? The problem with YTM is it assumes that you are able to reinvest all your money at the same rate. But of the three yields, YTM is the best, and this is what is used in the market. Always, when we talk about a yield, right, we say the bond is trading at 12% or the bond is trading at whatever, 11%, whatever. We're talking about the yield to maturity on the assumption that you are going to hold this bond until it matures and that all coupons received can be reinvested at the rate that at the yield to maturity. So it assumes that every single coupon received in this scenario, for example, can be reinvested at 12%. But that might not be the case if interest rates come down. Okay. For example, last year, we talked about yields of 20%, 24%, 30%, right? This is on the basis that YTM is 30%. That's what we are saying when we say yield of 30%, the bond is trading at 30%, 28%, 25%, right? We were talking about all of this. That is the yield to maturity we were talking about. But the yield to maturity has errors. And that biggest error is the fact that we assume that coupons are reinvested at the rate that the yield to maturity promises. Now, the problem is you buy a bond at 30%. We know that today I can't reinvest the coupon that I get at 30%. So the actual return to my hand will be a little different from what is promised. But for stable interest rate environments, yield to maturity holds, where you can reinvest coupons at pretty much similar rates. Then your yield to maturity is the promised return from the bond, and that is the return that you will get.
thank you.
So these two examples we're doing, when we come to holding period return, you will see that. And actually, the example 3, the last one before we come to holding period return, talks about exactly the question you were asking. So good. Let's try example 3. So what is the coupon rate of this bond? $59, yes, correct. Mirani, no. Remember what has been, check again, what has been given to you, nominal yield is not correct. $28, correct. As soon as you get nominal yield correct, you can now find the yield to maturity, right? The twist in this question is the nominal yield. So for those of you who are attempting the question, nominal yield is not 8%. If you're thinking 8%, it is not correct, right? Think about it again. Kilini, correct. Ravindu, no. Ranga, correct. Zanila, correct. Yes. So here, current yield has been given to you, right? Current yield is 8%. So if your current yield is 8%, we also know that current yield is your coupon as a percentage of the price that you pay. And we don't know what the coupon is because that's not been given, but the price is 80. We can use this to calculate what is the coupon. Coupon for the year is 80 into 8%, which is 6.4. That's the coupon. Right. Use this to calculate your nominal yield. Nominal yield is 6.4 coupon as a percentage of face value. 6.4%. And this is the coupon rate, right, that you should use to calculate yield to maturity. 6.4%. Now use that to calculate yield to maturity. So that is where you use guess one based on that. So what is guess one? Correct. Yep. Miran. Yes. $28. Guess one. I'm getting something different. Miran, yeah. That's okay. So guess one would be your capital gain 100 minus 80. No, 59, correct. 100 minus 80 over 8-year period, right? Plus 6.4 for the year divided by 90. That is 80 plus 100 average. So I see you all are getting 9.88. 9.89, correct. So it's up to you. What do you want to approximate this to? To do your calculation to find T1. What do you all want to approximate it to? You get 9.89. Up to you. What do you all want to do? You can use 9.89. That's okay as well. Or you can use something close. That's easy for you to manage because you're anyway going to do the interpolation. So one person said 10%. That's also okay. If you want to use 10, that's also okay. Majority of you, any idea What did you all use? $10. So shall I use 10? Okay. So we're going to approximate this to 10, right? It's up to you. You all can do whatever you want to, as long as your answers are where we need it to be, right? So just so that we have consensus in terms of what we're working on, that's why I wanted like a consensus number, but up to you. Just make sure it's very close. Okay, 10 is slightly not as close as we would ideally like it to be, but it's okay. We can use it. So C, what is C? 6.4 is the C for the year. How much is C?
1.6.
1.6. 1.6. into 1 minus 1 plus R. Here, R is 10%, so it's 2.5%, right? We are using 10%. For those of you who use 9.89, then use the appropriate R. 9.89 divided by 4, right? To the power 8 times 4, 32 quarters divided by R, 0.025 plus 100 divided by 1.025 to the power 32, which comes to 80.333. Can somebody confirm? Okay. 80.3357. Right. So that's P1. Now you have to guess. So that's close enough. Now we have to guess R2. Should R2 be higher or lower? Should our guess be higher or lower? 80.3357. Higher because we need the price to be lower. We need it to come down to 80. Therefore, we need something greater than 10%. What do you want to do? What do you all want to guess?
10.25.
Okay. So that means your quarterly R is how much? 2 point. How much is that? 2.525. 5625. So we use that to find P2. So it's still 1.6 divided by 0.02565. Remember, if you are guessing all these decimal places, if you are guessing 10.25, you use the correct decimal places, right? Otherwise, in your interpolation, it will make an error. So if you have 5 decimal places, once you make that guess, you use 5 decimal places in your calculation. Otherwise, in your interpolation, it creates an error, right? So You can make a guess that doesn't have this many decimal places. That's okay. But if you make this guess, make sure to use all the decimal places. Okay. So, Jani, the problem is you can't use Excel Go-Seek in your exam, right? So you have to, I mean, it's up to you to practice in terms of how you will do it in your exam. So how much is P2? Is it 79,1538? Great. 79.1538. Right. So now we have R1, R2, P1, P2. Okay, 28 looks correct. So we want 80. We have so therefore, if you look at the larger triangle, So you are getting R is equals to 10.0712. Is that correct? 10.071. So now we got nominal yield is equals to 6.4%. Current yield, this is a discount bond, so current yield should be higher. It was 8%. And yield to maturity should be even higher. It was 10.071%. Okay. I'm going to change this to 12%. Sorry. I'm going to change this because it's just there. It's a little confusing. $9%. Right? Okay. Overvalued, undervalued, or fairly valued. What do you compare it against? Nominal yield, current yield, yield to maturity, all three are there. And your required rate of return is 9%. Do you think this bond is overvalued, undervalued, or fairly valued? This is the part where you don't have to do any calculations. Overvalued, undervalued, or fairly valued. Okay, yes, Niraj. You have one answer, correct. Others, what do you think? Probably yes. 59, correct. So good. So what are you comparing against? Do you compare your required rate of return against nominal yield, current yield, or yield to maturity? Rangan, correct. 38, no. Do you compare it against nominal yield, current yield, or yield to maturity? Yes. Because we said nominal yield and current yield are not sufficient. Yield to maturity takes into account multiple considerations, right? Like your capital gain, like your coupon, like the time value of money, right? So it does have its own faults and problems, but it does take into consideration multiple things that nominal yield and current yield does not. So yield to maturity is the superior return measure that you will use to compare the return that you want. Remember, what is your required rate of return? It's the return that you want for the risk that you're taking. We spoke about this last time, right? When we did valuations, the return that you want for the risk that you're taking. What does yield to maturity tell you? What does yield to maturity tell you? It is the return that you will get when you buy it at market price. Yield to maturity tells you the return that you will get when you buy the bond at market price. So when you buy the bond paying 80 rupees, you will get a return of 10.071. You want, for the risk that you're taking, at least 9%. So are you happy if you buy a bond that gives you 10%? You should be, right? Because for the risk that you're taking, you only want a return of 9%. This bond will give you a return of 10 when you buy it at 80. Therefore, the bond is undervalued. The bond is undervalued. So the first thing is to understand that when you compare, when you want to check whether a bond is overvalued or undervalued, the correct measure to use is yield to maturity. Not current yield, not nominal yield, right? Second thing is to understand that yield to maturity tells you the return that you will get, that you will receive when you buy the bond at market price. You compare it against your required rate of return. Your required rate of return tells you the return that you want, that you require for the risks that you're taking. Remember, required rate of return comes from the risk-free rate plus risk premium that we take into account all these parameters of default risk, term spread, liquidity risk, covenants, and all that. So required rate of return comes from considering all aspects of risk and saying that I want a return of 9% if I'm going to invest in this bond. But if this bond is giving me a return of 10%, it is more attractive than what I want because it is undervalued, right? For 9%, there is a certain price that I'm willing to pay. Here, I am getting a higher return. That means the price of the bond is actually lower than what I am willing to pay. Again, 9% implies there's a certain price that I'm willing to pay, right? From required return of 9%, I can calculate what is the maximum price I'm willing to pay. So if the bond is giving me higher than 9%, that means in the market, the bond is trading lower than the price I'm willing to pay. That means the bond is undervalued. Undervalued. Right. So you can think of it any which way you want to. It's just easy if you think of it in terms of whether you will buy this bond or not. Is it an attractive buy or not? You will buy it if it is undervalued. You will not buy it if it is overvalued, right? It's not attractive if it is overvalued. So if you want 9 and you're getting 10, it's attractive. It is undervalued. Any questions here? Okay. I want to do one more question here before we take the break. Seems I have missed one for some reason. I've sent it on chat. It's a zero coupon bond. Won't take time. It's a tiny little question. Is the yield to maturity right, Miraj? I'm getting slightly different, I think. Not positive, but my calculations with something slightly different. Are you okay? But what I'm saying is, you don't need to do that. There's an easier way. You can do it that way, but there is an easier way. Zarina, I think your YTM is slightly off, but that's guess one, I believe. It's not the YTM. Janani, correct. Johan, no. Your nominal yield and current yield are not correct. So remember, it's a zero coupon bond. Okay. So calculate the nominal yield, current yield, and yield to maturity of the bond. It's a zero coupon. So if I look at the cash flows, today I pay 80 rupees to buy this bond. In 3 years' time, I get 100 rupees. And in between, I get nothing. I get nothing. Right? So coupon rate is zero. Therefore, what is the nominal yield? Nominal yield is a coupon of zero divided by nominal yield is face value, right? It's 100. So nominal yield is zero. Same for current yield. Current yield is zero divided by price. So current yield is also zero. In a zero coupon bond, you don't even need to do calculations. Nominal yield and current yield are always zero because there is no coupon. YTM also, you can do it using guess one, guess two. You can. You will get the same answer. But there is an easier way to do this calculation. Because do you see there are no coupons in between? Because there are no coupons in between, I can use the equation present or future value equals present value 1 plus r to the power n. Right? Because there are no coupons in between, we know that price today is future value discounted by 1 plus r to the power n. And I can use that to find r. It's very straightforward. So what is the yield to maturity? Price is 80, face value 100. 1 plus r is what I'm trying to find. N is 3. Therefore, you can get r is equals to 7.72. Right. You can do it the other way also. You should still get the same answer, but this is easy. Right. This is easy because there are no in-between cash flows, no coupons. Coupons are zero, right? So I can easily find yield to maturity using the equation. Any questions here? So now that I know nominal yield and current yield and yield to maturity, I can compare it against my required rate of return. My required rate of return is 10%. And I said earlier that the correct yield to compare is yield to maturity. Okay, Arunika? So yield to maturity is the correct yield to compare always. So if your required rate of return is 10%, you compare that against the yield to maturity. Is your bond overvalued, undervalued, or fairly valued? 59 correct. One, yes. Mirani, YTM is IRR. YTM is IRR.
Madam, for YTM, can't we use that formula, capital gain plus coupon divide by average price?
That is a guess, right? There, you're not taking into account that formula, you're not taking into account compounding. Correct? You're just dividing it by 3, right? You're just assuming that the gain is equally distributed, but it is really not. It's actually compounded. So that's why you can't use that formula as the final answer. That is just a guess. If you use that formula, then you have to do the full calculation to come up with what is yield to maturity.
Okay, copy. Noted.
Niraj, correct. 28, correct. So you all should see that your bond is overvalued, right? Overvalued because you want a return of 10%. That's your required rate of return. You want a return of 10% for the risk that you're taking. This bond, if you buy it at 80, will give you a return of 7.7%. Not enough. You want 10 to compensate you for the risk that you're taking. This bond will give you 7.7. Inadequate, right? The bond is overvalued. Or if you think of it the other way around, for a return of 10%, there is a certain price you're willing to pay. For a return of 7.72, the price you have to pay is higher than the price that you're willing to pay. Right? For a return of 10, there is a certain price you're willing to pay. For a return of 7.72, the price that you have to pay is higher. So 80 rupees is higher than the maximum price you're willing to pay, which is why it is overvalued. Okay. Right. So
in this calculation, it is zero coupon, no?
okay.
So I'm referring to my previous question. So compounding interest, is
Mhm.
happened? I am little bit confusing here. I'm asking why that previous
No,
formula.
so okay, so because you are, what is your yield to maturity, or to make it comparable with other instruments, you have to look at the compounding interest, right? Because if you're comparing it against other instruments, ultimately you have to look at the fact of how much you're going to look at, because that's why we don't compare bank deposit rates just with the bond rates or the debenture rates, right? You convert it to AER and look at it.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So just before we take the break, let me just show that to you. Remember I said we'll come back to it in part 1. I hope you're seeing. Let's see this thing. Remember in part 1, bond prices, this table, we said we'll come back to it, where we looked at intrinsic value versus market price, and we left this middle part. Right. This is essentially what we were talking about right now. Yield is the yield to maturity. So yield to maturity is what you will get, right? Required rate of return is what you want. So you always compare what you want against what you will get. If what you are going to get is greater than what you want, the bond is undervalued. If it is less than what you want, the bond is overvalued. And if it is equal, the bond is fairly valued. And it is the same principle as the fact that if the bond's fundamental value, the maximum price, the fundamental value is the maximum price you're willing to pay, versus the market price is based on your demand and supply. If the maximum price you're willing to pay is greater than the market price, it's undervalued. If it's less than the market price, it's overvalued, right? This is what we did earlier. This is what we did today. Let's take the break. It's 10:05. So 10:25 to do the holding period return calculations.